Welcome to Unpacked with Liat.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Today I am sitting with Gity Kogan, who is a family law attorney. She's a badass, and I want to pick her brain and just talk to her about what her job looks like. So thank you, Gity, for coming.
Thank you for that intro. Badass is, I think one of my clients actually has me in his phone that way.
Oh yeah.
And it always, it's a lot of pressure to live up to, but you know,
you can't disappoint.
It's nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take us through the background. What brought you to family law? How did you know that this was your avenue?
So I always wanted to be a lawyer because I always wanted to argue with people. And I always wanted to get paid to argue, right? As a kid, that's what I knew I wanted to do. Somehow in between, growing up in our world in LA and then graduating Base Yaakov, I went to nursing school.
Okay.
And then I sporadically took the LSAT one day. I was sitting in a pharmacology class and I was Googling, and apparently that was the last day to register for the LSAT, the upcoming LSAT.
Okay.
And in my mind, I'm always looking for signs, and that was my sign to go to law school. I always wanted to do family law because I had been volunteering at different places in the community, like Tomchei Shabbos, and I got to see whether it was men or women who had complex divorces and who were coming from these incredibly, for lack of a better word, just these high-end homes, in Hancock Park that were, and it didn't make sense to me how these people needed Tomchei Shabbos. And so I understood, and then, after delving into it, I would learn that, all of the money that they got in their divorce went to their lawyers or, on different strategies. And so they lost everything. And so they ended up with this incredible house, but they can't keep the lights on and literally can't put food on their table. And it's a bad time to sell the house. They can't afford to sell it, or there are too many liens on it. So the house isn't worth anything.
Right.
And I really committed myself to choosing the type of atmosphere for my clients where I don't take all your money. My strategy is not about what you want. My strategy is about what are the results that we can get you.
Right.
So I think that is something that I see it a lot of my opposing counsel, unfortunately, that is a key element that's missing. First of all, there's the humanity in it, but it's also, we're not supposed to be yes people. Just because a client wants something, walk them through what is that going to cost them? What is the human cost to them? What is the emotional cost to them? And the bottom line is, are they going to pay you 30, 40, 50 grand for what? A $10,000 upswing? So they've lost money ultimately.
Right.
Help them do the math, help them help themselves. That is your job as an officer of the court. Right. You have to do things with at least a little bit of integrity. And I think that was something that I saw lacking. It's something that I unfortunately still see lacking. And so that really drew me to family law, because I also have a certain personality where I'm comfortable telling somebody I'm not doing this. And if you don't like
You're
it,
not their yes man.
Yeah, there are 35,000 other people in this city who will do it for you. Happy travels.
Right. And that's important because you're leading with integrity. You have your values and your morals set. And I think that having the lens of understanding how expensive it is to lead a Jewish life, going through a divorce proceeding is not going to be cheap. And you still have children who are going to Jewish school and kosher food and mortgage. And if there's a shul membership, and if there's this tzedakah that you constantly give to, and all those things still happen, all the while going through a divorce proceeding. So I think it's really noble of you that you're able to walk them through that.
Yeah. And I, sometimes I'll get something from an opposing counsel on an issue, and I'll pick up the phone and I'll call them and I'm like, are we really doing this?
Right.
Where was your phone call to say, hey, my client wants this. Let's make it happen. Listen, I can't always get my client to cut a check for 10 grand. And sometimes on a very practical level, it's that my client can't do it. But also, where's the phone call to me? And I will make that phone call. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, they didn't call me. They don't want to. I'll call them and be like,
right.
Did you do the math on this? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I know these people did the math on this and they don't care. They're about to get paid. You know what I mean? Their mortgage is going to get paid that month off this one filing that was ridiculous.
To kind of backtrack it a little bit, of when people come to you and they reach out to you to be their attorney, what is the common bottom line that they have? The general conversation of, have they tried going to marriage counseling? Have they tried doing the work? Or is it more of something that they just see divorce as the solution, or is it nuanced in every case?
So I don't necessarily see a trend. I also think that people generally feel the need to defend themselves. And so most people come in and already off the bat tell you, I've tried everything. I can't do this anymore. How honest that is, I don't know. But I think generally people come in with a sense of, I've done everything.
Because you've been doing this for a while. So I can imagine that you've got this sixth sense of like the people who walk through your door. How many of them are being honest with themselves, honest with their situations, and honest with you throughout the coaching and the guiding that you have to do, all while being their attorney?
So I think that when you make a phone call to a divorce attorney, that's your last step. It's a hard call for people to make, whether men or women, because it signals to them, and I think that they understand on some level, despite the fact that they might say, I'm not ready, I just want to get some information. That's usually at the end. That's their last step. It's not the beginning. It's not the first call. You know, they've already done whatever preemptory stuff they're going to do, whether it's counseling or talking to their spouse or having at least conversations about their unhappiness. The common thread that I see in people in general is that people are not honest with themselves.
How so?
You know, people don't look at themselves and say, how did I contribute to the state of my relationship as it is?
Right. Because I want to speak to that from a mental health perspective. There is the understanding of, yes, if this is not a safe marriage, get out. You need to protect your safety. If there's children involved, you need to protect your children. And I don't say that lightly at all. However, the flip side of that is that if you're not willing to do the work, I'm coming from the mental health lens, which is why I'm kind of challenging you in this way, because what I often see or hear is the victimization and the lack of taking responsibility, like you were saying, of what did I do to contribute to this? And if this couple decides to divorce, she's still her, he's still him, your problems are still going to be there in a different relationship. They're just going to present different.
I absolutely agree with you. There is a general lack of accountability among people, I think, today, certainly our generation. And a lot of that has even seeped into the people that are a decade or two older than us, and not even going to talk about the ones that are younger than us. But I think we are a society that generally lacks accountability.
Okay.
And I think that it's easier to blame someone else than to look in the mirror and say, I'm unhappy because I'm unhappy, right? And so I think that people oftentimes look at their partner and say, you make me unhappy, versus I am unhappy.
Right.
I don't know why I'm unhappy. Instead of doing the work to look in the mirror and saying, what am I doing to make myself unhappy? I would rather blame you.
Right.
And as hard as it is to walk away from a marriage, I think that sometimes that's easier than looking in the mirror and saying, I'm unhappy.
Right.
And it's not a chemical imbalance. It's I'm not a happy person and I need to find something. And I see it a lot in the female clients, obviously more so than the men, because it's like, you know, they'll do a stint of like, I hate being a housewife. I want a job. Anything just to get out of the house. They get a job and they're like, I hate this. I hate that I have to be somewhere by 9 o'clock, right? So I no longer can do my Pilates at 9:30. So, right. So like the rest of us, you might have to get up at 5 and go work out if you're going to do a workout, because, you know, everybody's got carpool at 7 or 7:15. So either do your workout then, or you miss a workout. You know, sometimes you look like the rest of us. Sorry.
Right.
You know, and then and then they get their job and then like, I'm unhappy. I want to go back to being a housewife. And sometimes they'll have another kid just to solidify that I am a stay-at-home mom. And then that creates so much more tension for themselves because that doesn't fulfill them.
Right.
And so they don't want to be the people that look in the mirror and say, being a mom doesn't fulfill me. And I understand that, right? Because socially, you're not allowed to say that if you're a mom. You're not allowed to say, I'm unfulfilled in this role.
I think it depends.
In our circles, for sure not. You can't say that like being a mom can't be my whole life's purpose.
Right. I think that it's become more accepted in the past, I'd say 10 years. And I think it depends also with the individual, going back to like what you said about I'm unhappy versus like my husband isn't making me happy. Your happiness is tied to yourself. Same thing with your own fulfillment. So finding the ability to have that security to say, like, I love my kids, but being their mom and that being my sole responsibility does not fulfill me. I need something else. I think that being okay with saying that comes from within, and being able to say that is a sense of security, knowing that I love my kids so much and the two things can coexist, that I need something outside of that.
Look, I grew up in a house where my mom worked.
Right.
My mom is educated, she's sophisticated, and she worked.
Right.
Did we ever have the conversation of, did she want to work less or more? I mean, by the time that I was born and my parents had immigrated to America from the USSR, shouldn't have the option of not working. And so I grew up with somebody who cooked and cleaned and did laundry, and my uniform was perfectly pressed every day for school. And she took care of my grandfather like a rock star, and my uncle and our entire family, and went to work every single day and worked really, really hard. And, but they are a different generation because they didn't have the luxury of, am I fulfilled?
Right.
Like,
it wasn't an option.
Because that's a luxury. I think that, for us to, I think that when you can sit and evaluate, does your career bring you joy and fulfillment? It's sort of like, gentle parenting.
Right.
That's a luxury.
Much time on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you have a mortgage to pay, you're going to go get that job, and that's a conversation that I often have in court. When the wife is like, I need more money, get a job, go be somebody's secretary. I have a secretary, go be somebody's secretary. You don't need a high powered career, and there's nothing like, why is that beneath you to go to work every day? You need money, get a job.
Right.
We tell men, you need money, get a job, go get a job.
Yeah. And I think that's why probably people flock to you, is because of that brutal honesty that maybe people are worried to hurt their clients' feelings. But I think that they need that honesty, that reality check of, sometimes people don't understand how much life costs until they're in those proceedings. And they're like, wait a minute. And when they get to that point, then it's like a click, and they might understand what it costs, but then they come to you saying, I need more money. And then you have to break that to the reality of it. Like, your husband doesn't have any more hours in the day to go make more money. Like, if you need more money, you need to be the one to go out and make more and figure that part out.
That's a huge issue that I come across, or when they're asking me they want a specific asset. And I'm like, let's break down the carrying cost of this asset. How are you going to do that? You need a job. And it's like, well, I haven't been working. Listen, life happens to people and you have to pivot. And divorce is horrible. It is the most emotionally draining, life-changing event in your life. And if you actually loved the person that you're with, and you're getting divorced, whether it's your choice or theirs, it has catastrophic emotional consequences to people. And I am not immune to that. I recognize it. I've lived it. I get it. Life still has to go on.
Right.
And so you have to pick yourself up and you have to figure out how to make it work. Yeah, you never worked before. I'm really sorry. You're going to have to. And things like that, I have less sympathy for, because I watched my mom immigrate to this country from being a literature professor to being a housekeeper. And if my mom could do that, a woman who grew up in a world where she had 4 live-in staff members and then came to this country and had to be somebody's cleaning staff, if my mom can do that, princess, you can do that.
Right.
And you have to.
Yeah. And I think that's where that coaching, that guiding is hard, because in therapy, we say you can't lead somebody there. They have to get there on their own, right? And the same thing here, like, you can guide them and you can tell them as much as you want, whether it's in mediation, whether it's in court. The only way that they're going to actually do that is when they feel this sense of urgency to actually get up and get that job, or to actually find a solution to the problem that's presenting.
So I draw the line at, I don't tell people what to do. I tell them very simply, you have this request. These are the laws that would apply. These are the issues we have. Here are some of your alternatives. You may consider starting to look for work.
Right.
I can make all of these arguments for you, And I can take that position, but let's say this particular judge is going to be offended by that position because she works. This particular judge loves women. He feels like he's trying to do, God's work by protecting women. So this argument might work in front of him.
Right.
And those are also the nuances that you hire me for. But having said that, it's more of what are the realities, right? How long are you going to get support? And also, you're going to, at some point, you're both going to bankrupt each other and yourselves.
Right.
Fighting about what? I mean, and sometimes the reality is that he's never made the kind of money that you want.
Right.
You guys have been living on debt and credit cards,
right.
and now you're learning that.
Right. You're also now having to pay for legal fees.
And 2 households. At the end of the day, it's not, like I have certain clients and it's like, like the guy makes decent money, upper 6 figures. And he's like, yeah, but our mortgage is 20 grand a month. And then it's non-taxable, but you're paying the support off your, pre-tax money. And so there are certain consequences to that. And it's like, realistically, how is he going to cover your mortgage and pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment? And we're not talking about him living in one of these, incredible high rises. We're talking about him living like in a really like modest apartment.
Right.
But you also don't want him living in a shithole because your kids are going there.
Yeah.
Right. If you're doing your divorce right, you don't want your kids to not look forward to seeing the other parent. And that's something that I will fire a client when they want me to take that kind of custody position, because I think it's wrong. Right. If you can't really quantify why your ex is bad for your kids, why do you want them to grow up in a world where they have a dysfunctional relationship with one of their parents? Divorce is going to be hard enough. Yeah. Like, have some rahmanis on your kids. Right. Like, you want them to want to go to their dad's house for Shabbat. You want them to want to look forward to see their parent. And I understand, and that becomes purely ego, and also what you were talking about, like the victimization. Like, there's something about wanting to be that martyr, right? And wanting to be that single mom, right? And like, oh, woe is me. Stop.
Yeah, it's not benefiting anybody.
It's not. And it's the same thing with the guys that want 50-50 custody. And it's like, bro, you don't even come home at night. You're home at midnight. You're not going to see those kids. You want to do a morning routine? Why don't you pick them up an hour early before school, take them for some breakfast, and then take them to school? That I don't appreciate. But when you've got a dad that actually loves those kids, why do you want to keep them from them? I get it. You want to punish him, but you're hurting them.
Right.
And you are hurting them, and they are hurt.
Yeah.
Those are kids that are going to come back and be like, my dad wanted me. Why would you keep him from me?
So how do you coach your clients throughout that pain, making them aware of like, look at what you're doing?
So I'll ask my client, be like, do your kids love him? And when I have an honest person sitting in front of me, they'll say, yeah, my kids love him. Why would you take that from them? What more can you ask for than a parent who actually loves their kids, right? And if you can honestly say they love them, then you have to give those kids a chance to be with a parent who loves them. Because at the end of the day, no one's a perfect parent. You're also putting those kids in front of their iPads. I don't want to hear the stories of, I never let my kids watch TV. I don't give them iPads. Every second of every day that they're home is filled with trips to the observatory. Stop. It's not true.
Right.
It's not true. And you can be mom of the year, mom of the century, and I'm not denying that. But you're not doing a perfect job either.
We're all close.
And so let your kids be with someone they love who loves them. They always do. Those kids always do, because I see it from them as adults, right? I thought my dad didn't want me. And now looking at XYZ, I realize my mom just did everything she could to keep him away.
Yeah.
And, bankrupted him in the process. Like, he spent all his money trying to get us back.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not from LA, from Dallas, but like very small community. Very few divorces, actually. I think because it's small community, people keep things private, and because everybody knows everybody talks. Definitely relationships that should have ended for sure. But I think also that privacy matter and having people talk, or the cultural pressures of being in the Jewish community and having to navigate that.
I think that fear stems across so many cultures and so many social circles. And oftentimes people come to me and they're telling me something. They're like, you must think I'm so stupid that I didn't leave. And I'm like, not at all. I understand what I don't understand. Like, I understand that I've never been in a relationship where someone has raised their hand to me. So I understand that I cannot really recognize what that does to you. I certainly recognize what battered woman syndrome is. I understand what we call in domestic violence, cycles of violence. So, somebody comes to me and says, he, broke my arm here. He gave me a black eye there. The last thing I ask is, why didn't you leave? I look at them and I'm like, I get why you didn't leave. And so I know that I've never lived that. And so I can never pass judgment, but I don't have to understand.
Yeah.
And when I defend men, I would never ask the woman on the stand, well, why didn't you leave? It's not the question.
Right. So what is the question?
I think that a lot of people lie about domestic violence because they want an upper hand in custody, because they want to sell it back for something, because they have really disingenuous and dishonest lawyers that push an agenda. Sometimes
You've seen it used as a tool.
All the time. Or when they want to move away.
Which is unfortunate for the people who actually suffer domestic violence. In a way, it invalidates their experiences that lawyers will use that as a bargaining chip or as a way to...
It spits in the face of every woman who's ever had a hand raised. It spits in the face of every woman who's, who literally doesn't know where the bank accounts are, who has a credit card that has a $200 limit on it. Like, it's one thing when you live like a certain affluent lifestyle and you don't know what your husband makes just because you don't care, right? You live in a $3, $4, $5 million house. Everything gets paid for. You have a credit card that doesn't have limits on it, as far as you know. You have a husband who bitches at you that, like, oh my God, how'd you spend 30 grand this month? Fine. But that's not the same thing as a woman who literally has to figure out how she's going to feed a family of 4, 5, 6 on $200 this week.
Right.
Because that's all he gave her. And the utilities aren't paid for because he's just the guy that takes care of everything. The utilities are paid for because she's not allowed to even know who the utility company is. She is not a signer on the bank account, so she can't sign a check. She cannot charge a credit card. There's no going to coffee on a Wednesday with a friend because she doesn't have $5 for a cup of coffee. Yeah. There is a difference. And I think that so many women abuse that distinction. And they're like, well, I didn't know, like, I don't know where we bank. Willful ignorance is not the same thing, or I don't care because he handles it is not the same thing as I literally have access to nothing.
Right.
And if I leave tomorrow, I can't charge a $20,000 retainer on my credit card. If I leave tomorrow, he will cut off my access and I can't put gas in my car. That's financial abuse.
That's very different than not knowing what your life costs monthly.
Yeah. And listen, I would love to be in a position to not know what my life costs. So when those women come to me and they're like, again, you must think I'm so stupid that I don't know. I'm like, no, good for you that for the last X amount of years, you didn't have to think about how the bills get paid. Good for you.
Yeah.
But now we have to start thinking about how are the bills going to get paid.
Yeah.
Tell me the square footage of your house. Tell me where it is. Tell me, the ratio of front lawn, backyard to house, and we can figure out what your utilities are. I can help you do that. But we have to start figuring it out so that you can understand, can you afford to live in this house?
I'm sure you do a little bit of social working with matching your clients with resources.
All resources, all the time. From a realtor to help them sell their house to a, financial planner in terms of you're going to get a settlement. Please don't blow your money. Let's get it invested for you, to mental health professionals. I mean, clients ask us for so many referrals for so many things that we just become like this resource for the most random things all the time.
Yeah.
And I love that about my job. I love that, if you have a smaller settlement, I know a guy, I can send you to this person at a wealth management fund that can start, a retirement account for you. Yeah. If you've just gotten several $1 million, we don't, maybe you need something more than just a retirement. You need some kind of an investment account, and I can send you somewhere here. Yeah. You have kids that are in the Orthodox world. You may want an Orthodox therapist. I've got one for you. Yeah. Maybe go to a therapist. Are you in therapy? Not saying you need to be or you should be. I'm just asking you because this seems really, you seem to be taking this a lot harder for somebody who chose to leave XYZ. Perhaps you need someone to talk to.
Right. The tangibility of being able to give them those resources is satisfactory in a way. Like you're able to see the fruits of it. And I think that the reality or like the aha moment in the proceedings of them realizing like what life actually is going to look like post proceedings, post settlement, when that finally drops in, that's the reality of therapy, chaperoning the kids by yourself to extracurriculars, all while trying to manage dinner and groceries and now cleaning because you can't afford the cleaning help in the same way. And all of these things is like the reality setting in. And until they're in it, they're not going to know what it actually looks like. Because you could paint a picture for them. They don't really know until they're living it.
Yeah. And it's, again, this is the most raw human experience I think that could happen to somebody because it, whether or not you choose to get divorced, it happens to you, right? Because you can't control the other side. And so even the most amicable of people, I mean, this is the end of something that you planned, right?
You're grieving.
Yeah. You bought a house with this person. It's not about just the house. It's the dream that you're mourning. You have children, or, you know, if you took on a role as a step parent, quasi step parent, you planned your life around this person and this dream. And if you're unlucky, you're living a nightmare. If you're lucky, even ending amicably, it's the end of that dream. And so you have to start again. And it's not about, dating again. It's about building a new dream. And that's a skill set that I think a lot of people lack. And I mean, in general, because life happens.
What does amicable look? That means not going to family court and settling in mediation?
It doesn't even have to be mediation. It could be discussions between lawyers. It could be discussions between parties. You know, you don't have to pay third party to iron things out. You can get a lawyer.
Like you prefer that over going to family court?
So I get I deal with a lot of complex financials and a lot of complex custody issues. So I don't have a lot of that. And I wish I did, because it's not only is it a lot more fulfilling, you also, you know, you get to just help people end quickly and peacefully. And it's nice.
Kids are involved. They're now dragged into it too.
And when I deal with really complex custody, that's a different level of satisfaction when you, not just when you get a client something, but, you know, like when a client sends you a photo around Thanksgiving or Christmas, or from people, it's around Rosh Hashanah. They send you a photo of their kid and they're like, thank you. Yeah. Like, you got this for me. And it's like, it's the most satisfying feeling in the world. There is also certainly the clients that, you know, you can get them everything they asked for and they're
still not happy.
And they're like, I don't understand. What'd you get me? The judge was always going to order this.
Right.
Okay, great.
Those are the people that tie their happiness to other people or are still stuck in the victimization of things. There's also recognizing that some people are beyond help. You can bring the horse to the water. You can't force the horse to drink.
That is my favorite saying, because that is the majority of just family law litigants, right? If you're lucky, they listen to you. And they do. It's not even, you know, and it's not an ego thing. It's not about listening to me. It's like,
yeah, but they still have contact with each other. Like they could, you know, it's not like their phone numbers are blocked from each other. So you could be telling them something, and then the spouse, out of spite, could be calling and be like, "We're going to do da-da-da-da-da to you," and then.
So they do. I actually, harder, you know, I did have a case where everything I told him,
he went and told her.
He went and he told her, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's not helpful. And he's like, well, you know, I think that like if she knows, we can negotiate better. And I'm like, really? Because this seems to be escalating pretty quickly. So again, it's not my ego. You're paying me a lot of money to hear my advice. It's really a waste of that money if you don't take it.
Right.
Like, why are you asking me if you're not going to listen?
But at what point do you see that this is a marriage that needs work and it's not ready to end yet? Or this is a marriage that needs to end?
So when they come in from a very acrimonious perspective, I get it. Like, I'm not asking questions. Mm-hmm. But when they're coming in and they're super amicable and they're like, well, it's obviously one. So it's not, I say they because I mean either him or her.
Right.
So let's say like the guy comes in, right? And he's like, no, she's great. She's such a great mom, you know, and I don't want to shaft her. So, just tell me what the numbers are and then maybe I'll offer her more, blah, blah. And we just sit there and like, sometimes I gotta look at them and I'm like, Rick is getting divorced.
Right.
Like this, like maybe you guys want to give it another try. And usually the response, in my entire career, I think I only had it once or twice. And it was someone I knew. He had called me early on. And I said to him, I was like, you're going to have to look at your kids in the face one day and say, I did everything I could to salvage that marriage and it was not salvageable. And so he went off and they tried therapy and whatever. And then they came back and I was like, I tried, you can't do it. So that only happened once. But I do have times where they're so amicable that I ask them, like, why are you getting divorced? And almost always the response is, we're only like this now because we don't live together, because we've both moved on. This is the best thing that ever happened to us. We are so not good together. We're so good like this. So when I see that there is kindness and respect, I always ask the question.
Yeah.
How come you guys are getting divorced?
Yeah. Well, it's
like,
important
are you
for
sure
you to
want
know,
it?
right?
Not
Not curiosity perspective, but
sometimes it's important for me to,
so you know what to argue, right?
Well, strategically, so that I can almost anticipate what the other person is, right? Because if I know that it's not aggressive, right? Like I know that if they're in a good place together and they got divorced just because they kind of grew apart and whatever, I know that writing an email that's strongly worded or aggressive is
going to come off defensive, like not great.
It's unnecessary,
right.
And I don't want to be responsible for ruining the dynamic between two people. Like if you guys are talking,
co-parent.
If you guys are talking, you go ahead and talk. If you guys want to come up with a deal, and I just have to review it for to see if it protects you and whatever, I'm happy to do that. If you're frum and you have like rabbis working on it, God bless, I'm happy to talk to the rabbis. If you have your parents involved, that's fine. I don't want to ruin your relationship, whether or not you guys have kids together. That's not my goal. But when you're coming in and it's like, oh my God, it's a nightmare. She won't let me see the kids. Like it's been like 3 months and she's doing this and she's doing this. Yeah, they're going to get a very strongly worded letter. But I always tell my clients, or they're like, start with a letter, send a really aggressive letter. So I tell them, I don't threaten things. I tell opposing counsel what I'm going to do. So if you're not prepared for us to do X, Y, Z, I'm not just going to write that shit because it's what you want.
Right.
That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you. It makes you look weak and it makes me look dumb for just following your lead.
Yeah.
And so I write a letter and I write it once. The next time I go to court.
Yeah. I think that understanding the client and understanding the nuance of the relationship and asking that question of what's happening behind the scenes, what led you here, gives you that perspective and ability to be able to gauge what is needed. And I think that doing that and the sensitivity that you have to the situation, like, yes, you're representing the client, like your client, but in doing that, you also understand the humanity on the other side.
I represent people and their children. That is how I see it. Every dollar you pay me is money taken from your children. Every litigation tactic that I employ has a consequence to your children, whether literally because the court orders impact the children or because I'm going to keep you in litigation for X amount of time and so you're emotionally drained. So I always take it very seriously, and my clients' children in my mind are the client as well.
Roughly how much? I mean, give a ballpark. I know it's nuanced, but like...
Can't tell you. Could be 20 grand, could be 2 million, could be 15 million. There is literally...
There's no cap.
There's no cap, and there's no minimum, because, here's how it works. You come to me, if you can pay the rate and you can pay the retainer, welcome. Whether it's a quick thing, if I don't have the time to just take on like a quickie, whatever, then I won't do it. But for the most part, I can do something really quickly for you. Sometimes it's just like, can you just do this? And, if you're a friend of a friend, I'll take care of it. And sometimes, when it's really complex and all of us are working on it and it's a 24/7 job for the next 6 months, then that's what it is. And so generally though, I am an expensive attorney.
Yeah.
I just am. I pride myself on billing modestly. But even within the modesty of the bills, I have complex cases. And so the bills are high. They're probably significantly lower than other people, but they're still high. And so it doesn't matter. If your bill's 20 grand and you make a year, your bill might as well be 100 grand a month.
Yeah.
It's still a massive bill.
Yeah.
But I also tell people, and I think that this is the problem, right? Like people call me and they're like, oh, you came highly recommended and blah, blah, blah. But how am I supposed to pay you? And I'm like, listen, champagne wishes and caviar dreams on a McDonald's budget. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
You're coming because you want a certain skill set because I came as a referral from somebody. You can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then people start to like haggle, and it's like, it's not to say that it's similar, but it's almost like, people go to Lenny's restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, some things are more expensive, some things are not. But you want that. You're not ordering just a drink. Right. You're coming here and you want to order 6 or 7 things. Why should Lenny be giving you a discount? This is what you want to do.
Something a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah. And, I have people come in and they're like, let's barter, if they're in the fashion industry. And I'm like, I don't want this. I don't need 10 of whatever it is that you sell.
You don't want people to give you 10 dresses in exchange for your legal expertise, 20 car washes,
But like in the From community, it really is a thing. And I'm like,
I barter. Gym pack of like 10 sessions if you.
And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. No. And I think that goes to you understanding your worth and understanding like what you bring to the table as their attorney. And
listen, go with somebody else. It's okay.
They can shop around elsewhere.
There are plenty of lawyers in this city.
Yeah. So what's your red line? Like you won't cross, even if it helps your client, even if it gets them what they want, even if it, mediates everything right away and it's not going to take on litigation for another 6 months.
What do you mean?
Red line?
What do you mean?
I'm sure the lines get blurred. There's a lot of things that can get really iffy along the way.
So look,
there's the law and there's moral and ethics, and then there's like the spirit of the law, right?
So I'll tell you this. My reputation has to survive long after your case is over. Right. I've got to appear in front of these judges with other clients long after this is done. I intend on having a very long career, knock on wood. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
If I know the document exists out there and it has XYZ, you're never going to hear from me, don't produce it. You're never going to hear from me, we're just not going to disclose that.
Right.
First of all, I've watched clients throw lawyers under the bus. I am not putting my license on a line for your child support payment.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And I think that's actually why my friends do hire me for their cases, because my friends know I have their back and my friends know that their case is going to be kosher.
Yeah.
Like when a Based-In reviews it for whatever situation, no one's going to say that like Gity Kogan modified documents or whatever, because when I see a lot of attorneys do that, and I am the lawyer that screams it like from the rooftops. I'm like, this is forged. This is a doctored exhibit. And I absolutely will report someone to the state bar for that. I will absolutely file a sanctions motion against an attorney for that. So I can't be the lawyer that then does that shit. Yeah. Because I yell very loudly when people do that. I always say that and whatever your level of observance, God only knows what mine is, but from and God-fearing is when the door closes. And I've represented so many from people over the years where what happens behind closed doors is not what happens at Minion. And so to me, from is not about, and I get it, this is very controversial. From is not about your level of Shmiras Shabbos. It's not about your level of kashrus or your other observance or whatever. From is when the door closes. Do you have enough Yiras Shemayim to...
Are you the same person?
Yeah, to know that God is watching.
Are you Instagram versus reality?
Yeah. Do you have enough of that recognition to know that God is watching, right? Not my fans, not my friends outside there. God is watching. Yeah. So what am I doing in this house?
Yeah.
How do I treat my spouse?
Yeah. You don't know how people are behind closed doors.
This is, I'm not a big poster on Instagram and I try not to be on it all the time, but practicing family law is where you really, Instagram versus reality sounds funny, but it's like, you really don't know what happens behind closed doors. You have no idea what people's lives are like.
Yeah.
Don't look at the house and the car and the jewelry. You have no idea how that plays out. Like I get a call from somebody and I don't even realize that their partner, whatever, is someone I follow on social media because maybe we sat on like some like charity thing together once or twice or something. And they'll tell me things that are so horrifying. And I'm not talking about cheating or whatever. I'm really talking about horrifying incidents of abuse and neglect and, or maybe like what's really going on with people financially and the total financial destruction in their lives. And then, you go on that other person's Instagram and you're like, Jesus, like you would never think that.
Yeah.
Right. Because that Instagram is so perfectly curated. And, it's the joke, right? Like the longer the birthday or the Valentine's Day posts, the more often they've cheated on each other.
Yeah.
But
or like, I love it. Like, we've been through hard times. And then I saw a meme that was like, don't write, we've been through hard times if you're not going to tell us what
those
hard times
were. Right. But that is the thing. Like we joke about it, but that is the truth, is that people in happy, healthy relationships don't need to post the happiness and the healthy state of their relationship.
Because it's the sense of security. You're not seeking that outside approval. You're not looking for that.
I am so afraid of Ayin Hara.
So I'll tell you something
really
I learned.
Like when clients ask me something, I like turn around my ring and I don't answer the question because I'm so afraid of Ayin Hara.
So something that Lenny taught me, and I think also maybe the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his Rebbe, the Biala Rebbe, says that if you believe that everything that you have comes from Hashem, then there is no Ayin Hara because it's not yours. So again, if you believe that everything that you have comes from Hashem, the house, the car, the ring, the this, the that, and you're not coming from a place of boasting it and, whatever, then there is no harm that can be done to you because you know that it's not yours.
I'm so
sorry. So saying that, like,
I know, and I'm so superstitious, but it really is, people, it's not even like people are haters. It's like people go through so much in their lives and, like in Yiddish, you say they can't fargin, right? Like they can't let you have. It's not you know what I mean? It's not.
In Hebrew, the word is lefargen.
Fargin.
Lefargen lach means like to lift you up, like to like.
You can't have it. I don't even want it. But I don't want you to have it. And it's like, and I don't think that sometimes it comes from a bad place because some people are just not good people.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's because somebody really, people go through tragedies in their lives. Sometimes stars don't align for people and it's, God knows I was there for a long time. And you don't want those people first of all, I don't know why you want anybody in your intimate space.
I don't.
Like, why do you want people, hey, oh, you're so happily married? Yeah. Great. Go be happily married. Go focus on that happy marriage.
I think that going back to social media, the idea of this into people's lives that we see the exterior, we see the 30-second snapshot of it. And I think that the reality of it is that I don't know how hard you worked or what you had to suffer or how many nights you may have cried yourself to sleep to get to where you are today. And you don't know the same for me. So you might see me walking around with a 10-carat diamond, maybe one day, who knows? But
Lenny,
you don't know what it took to get there, right? And I'll take it to Lenny for a second. Like, people don't know what it took to get to the point today of where God he is in his career, what that looked like for us, how many times we had to move, how many times it was unstable, how I completely lost my shit and went off the rails and had to get serious help. People don't know. They just see it today. And I could say that today because thank God, like I'm okay and I'm healthy. But there was a time where I really wasn't. And people don't see that. And they just see the finish line. They skip to the last page of the book.
And he feels your emotions, and so he's coming at you.
Hi. And they read the last page, and they get the spoiler before they understand the hardship and the heartbreak.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
How many hours of work it takes to afford something like this.
Yeah.
The amount of just agmas nefesh between two people who are overworked and overtired and,
being in the time. So I will say this, like for me, sitting here in this conversation is more to bring that enlightenment of like, it's not cheap. It's not easy. And you know what?
Better.
Neither is therapy and neither is doing the work. It's emotionally exhausting. It's expensive. Therapy is not cheap these days. Do not go to some quack. Go to somebody with credentials. Go to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Go to somebody who's trauma informed, who can talk to you and work through with you. After you've done all of that, if then that's a different conversation. But whether somebody is going to go through a divorce proceeding or going to go to therapy, either one is going to cost money. We all have our baggage. We're all flawed human beings. And the next person out there that you might feel like is they're also flawed. Everybody has their baggage, and it's a matter of how and what are you willing to do? What is in your control? What is not in your control? What is important to you? What's your red line as an individual within a relationship? And how do you see yourself moving forward in a healthy way in this relationship through guidance? And if that, after all that, it's still not possible, then.
So look, I think it's all hard, right? It's hard to be single and it's hard to be married.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go through a divorce and be a divorcee. And it's hard to never have that experience.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a parent. It's hard to be a step parent. It's hard to want children and not have them. It's hard to not want children and have them. Life is hard.
Yeah.
And if people think that getting divorced is going to be a breeze, it's not. No matter how amicable the process, it is the end of a dream.
Yeah.
It's the end of really, some of the most important relationships you're ever going to have in your life, right? The person that you want to have a family with, whatever that family looks like, whether it's just the two of you are married or, whether or not you have children, whether or not you share, you have stepchildren. A family is a family, and it's defined differently for every person.
Yeah.
But the ending of a family is, it's one of the most intense traumas I think you can experience.
Yeah. And I think that also understanding that if you do have children together, you are in each other's lives.
Ever. Until the day you die.
Yeah.
It's not until the day your kids turn 18.
It's not until they're 18. No,
so
because
the
there's weddings and there's
die.
grandkids and do not think that now this person is out of your life. You have to figure out a way to still work and communicate with them amicably.
So I had a client the other day. She has an app that has a countdown until her kid turns 18. And so I don't know if she calls it Freedom or it's the Freedom app. It's not done at 18 because your kid is experiencing so much trauma in what is happening here.
Yeah.
That you will have to deal with those consequences long after their 18th birthday. And even if your kid doesn't experience trauma, if you're one of those lucky people whose kids are totally unaffected by the divorce, you're going to have to deal with this person forever, whether it's kids and grandkids. It's going to be Christmas and Hanukkah and holidays. And, your kids are not going to want to split holidays anymore.
The child's dream of the parents getting back together, they're still a child, even if they're 50. When they see the parents together and they're amicable and whatever, and even if they're amicable now because they're divorced, because they have the child away, the child still wants that.
As an adult, you want both your parents to be able to come to your home. You want to be able to have a holiday with both. And you will deal with that inability to coexist for the rest of your life. And I don't belittle things that, people do and, the emotional consequences, whether it's cheating, whether it's gambling addictions, drug addictions. I recognize all of those. And you still have to find a way to coexist with this human, and if you look at them as they're half the DNA of your kid, you would not have that magical creature without this person.
Yeah. And I will say that also the parts that you don't like in your spouse, sometimes your kids have those qualities too.
In spades.
And you have to learn to be okay with those, whether you're married or you're not. But if you're divorcing those qualities, you can't divorce those qualities in your kid. And you're going to have to learn how to accept them and love them with those qualities because they're your child and it's not their fault that they inherited those qualities. And that's a trigger for you or it's hard for you. You still have to love them through it.
Listen, it's all hard, right?
Yeah.
And this is where accountability comes in. And this is where honesty with yourself comes in. Am I telling people to make things work? Yeah. Try to make it work. There are certain things you can't make work. Serial cheating, or I mean, any kind of physical abuse.
Yeah.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Somebody puts their hand on you once, that's done. Certain, behaviors and like the way they speak to you. But so many other things are workable, they're fixable, right? It's like the Bieber song, like, I'd rather work on this with you. Like, work on it. Because someone else is going to have the same shit, just packaged a little differently. People are flawed. People have different flaws, but they're still flaws. And if you think that on the other side is somebody who's flawless, think again. Unless you're really with a monster, then yeah, you'll find someone better. But if your spouse is not a monster, and you haven't demonized them, and I think that's a lot of it, right? Is that people demonize the other side because it makes them, it self-justifies the decision to leave.
It's perspective. It's just not asking for what you want, not wanting to be too needy, not wanting to be burdened, not wanting to.
I don't know those.
Like that's where the resentment comes in, and the demonizing of the spouse, of like, I mean, in the couples therapy, like, well, he's not giving me what I want. Okay, but are you asking for it?
Right. Like, that's a big one. Like, what is it that you need? And I think that there's also just a lack of understanding of what it is you need for yourself.
What it is you need, but also recognizing that the person on the other side is also human.
People have limits.
They're not a robot. So they are not going to be able to fulfill your needs every single time. And it goes back to the fulfillment piece that we were talking about earlier. Find a way to make yourself happy. And yes, being in a relationship, being in a marriage, in a partnership, it requires work on both ends. And it does require self-sacrifice, and it does require compromise. But not before you know what it is that you need. Your happiless is not tied to the other person.
You just said partner. I was watching this. There's this Hasidic Rebbe that does these little 15-second and one thing once, and it really resonated with me. It's like, stop calling them your partner. It's not a partnership. And I do this all the time.
Yeah.
It's not a financial transaction.
50-50.
And so I sit there and I'm like, when we're fighting and whatever, and I kind of want to bring it back, and I want to say we're partners. I'm like, no, we're a team.
Yeah.
We're a team. Teammates are not a partnership, right? Because partnerships have legal consequences. There are agreements, right? You can sever a partnership. Think about college sports teams or high school sports teams, right?
Yeah.
Those crews, they're a family, right? You want your teammate to succeed because then you succeed.
Yeah.
If your teammate is sick, the entire team might suffer, right? You want your teammates to be in peak health. You want your teammates to be happy, right? You take care of your teammates because they, it's a reciprocal relationship, and it's not based on financial ties. And it can be severed, but you don't want someone off your team if you guys are doing well.
Knowing your place, meaning what is it that you bring to the table? What is it that he brings to the table? And if me bringing to the table is me being just a housewife, I need to find the contentment in that and understand that this is where I need to be. Oh, I tried the job. Was not great. I will tell you that much. And I realized through trying the job, I need to be home for my kids. And that's how this whole avenue and this whole venture started, because I wasn't fulfilled in just being a housewife. I needed something more, but that something more couldn't look like 30 hours a week in addition to being responsible for picking up my kids, dinner, Shabbat, cooking, cleaning, all of those things.
And it's interesting because when we talk about knowing your place, it's also a matter of, what do you bring to the table? Are you compatible with that person? Meaning, is what you bring to the table what they're looking for, right? Because if what you bring to the table is being an extraordinary housewife, but they're looking to be the other half of a power couple, then you're not compatible.
And he might want you to earn 6 figures too.
Right. If you're bringing a career to the table and all he wants is a housewife,
he's not going to be happy with you.
Right.
You're going to be looking at how little time you have with the kids or how little focus you have.
And it's
It really depends on the person.
And and I think that also sometimes changes with time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where you are in your relationship, where you are in terms of kids and all of that. And I think that people have to be honest with themselves about that, right? Like, the fact that you can walk in and say, well, I'm a high powered XYZ and I wear heels and I do this, and I never miss my Botox and whatever. But if he's just looking, like if his dream isn't you putting money in the bank, but his dream is that, when he comes home, you're sitting there with your kids, and that that satisfies like a goal for him, and it's the same way with women, right? Like if you're looking for a guy that's going to take care of you, but you're with a guy who can't do that, then just be honest with yourself.
What would you say to people who are listening who might feel shame or feel like, I don't really know where to start? Making that phone call to you or somebody might be really scary or embarrassing to them.
You don't have to do anything. It doesn't commit you to anything. Make the phone call. I was at an event like 4 or 5 months ago, and somebody was there and their sister was going through a really bitter divorce. And he was like, maybe you can talk to her. And so I came up to her and I said, look, this is neither the time nor the place. Here's my card. And I gave her my cell on the back of the card. And I'm like, when you're ready, call me. It's a free phone call. You don't have to pay me $600. It's not anything. You and I can just have a conversation. And then I was at an event this weekend and he was there again. And he's like, God, how do I get my sister to call you? And I said, you can't. She has to be ready to call me.
You can bring the horse to the water.
Exactly. Nothing, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Right.
So make a phone call. It doesn't change your life. I get that a lot. I have 6 more phone calls with 6 different lawyers. And I tell them, I said, listen, off the bat, we're not going to be a good fit. So, you can scratch me off the list. But I really suggest that you only call, if you've already talked to 2 people and now you're talking to me, only call 1 more person, if at all. Because what you're looking for, you don't even know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And, too many options, never a good thing.
Yeah. We're not Baskin Robbins.
Yeah. You've talked to enough people at this point. You're an adult. You have enough human experience. Who did you mesh with? Don't be that person that's calling 12 or 10 or even 5 different lawyers. And then my favorite is the so-and-so told me this. Is that the law? Or what's your interpretation of this? You can hire me and find out.
Let me ask you this. You see so much. You hear so much. You experience so much heartbreak. How do you stay sane? How do you stay hopeful for yourself?
I am a hopeless romantic. Hopeless. I really believe that you can love someone through anything that happens. I think that if you love someone and you have mutual respect, you can get through anything in life. And God knows, like when I say anything, I really mean anything, like the things that would push people over the edge. I really believe that. I really, really do. Life happens to people. Unexpected, totally unanticipated. The people you meet in life, the people you end up with, the circumstances you're in, it really is all from Hashem. You can have an incredibly successful practice 1 year and make no money the next year. You can have no success and then have that one case and, make enough to sustain you for a few years. It's all from Hashem. You have no idea what's coming. And if you can just find someone that you can look at and say, like, no matter what happens or no matter what life brings, I want to do life with you. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
And you do it until you don't. And then when it gets hard, like you look at that person and be like, I'm not ready to walk away. And I think the mistake that people make is if you want to leave, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. When you create that kind of a dynamic in a relationship, you tell that person you don't give a shit about them and you're not invested in this. And so automatically there's a step back of like, why should I be invested?
The defense mechanism, by the way.
And I think that that's probably, a lot of like mental health professionals will tell you the opposite, right? Like, no, know your worth, take a higher stance, take a more aggressive stance. If that's how you talk to the person that you are building a family with, you tell that person that they have limited value.
Yeah.
I'm
going to go back to what you said. You're a hopeless romantic. And if you can have mutual respect for each other, once respect goes out the door, very little is left Because when you don't respect the individual, you don't respect the sanctity of the marriage, that's when you start talking like that.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a family used to have sanctity, and somehow we've lost that as people. We've lost that as a society. You can be divorced and still respect the sanctity of your family. And it's the lack of respect and recognition that a family is sacred and you're always going to be family, you know, and if you miss that, God, you're missing out on so much in life, right? And you create so much unnecessary chaos and hurt for yourself. You can end this relationship and still be good to one another.
Put your hurt aside.
And I get that that's easier said than done. But if you're going to come out on okay on the other side, you have to do that for yourself. You know, have a moment of honesty with yourself.
It's not fun to live with that anger
all the time.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's draining. It requires so much energy to stay angry at that person.
You know, like the sabotaging every custody visit by being late or bringing them a day late or creating a plan for them. Stop.
And also, kids lead by example. So whether you're aware of it or not, you're communicating to your children how to be in the world.
I want to say this because it's something that I've come across recently twice. And I feel like it's so opportune that we're doing this because I want to share this. I came across 2 cases recently that really are probably some of the worst alienation cases I've seen. One is a case that I had years ago, and the client called me recently, and the kids are all adults now, and he had 6 kids. He had no relationship with any of them. The wife really did a number on them. And he called me and he's like, 5 of my 6 kids have come back to me. They're married, they're adults, and we have an incredible relationship, and I'm so grateful. And the other case, there was a lot of alienation and it's still going on, but the older child is very vocal with the dad about how she recognizes that mom is the reason that dad's been out of their lives for so long. And I just want to say that more often than not in these alienation cases, the kids get it in the end. And they bring themselves back to the parent that they were alienated from. And all it does is create so much unnecessary hurt and animosity toward the parent that alienated. Because it's like, why did you keep that kid from me? And so many of these alienating parents, they tell themselves a story, right? Like the other parent's this, the other parent's that. But in their heart of hearts, they know that they're just doing it because they want the kid and they want the power because the other parent left. And so this is their power.
Yeah.
This is you took my life, like you took that lifestyle from me by, leaving me. So now I'm going to take your kids because I know it's the only thing that matters to you. I think that people need to remember that those kids go back to those parents. You don't win. You've really just hurt your kids.
Having an understanding both require work. Staying married and leaving.
Yeah. You can be in therapy for a long time. If you're a healthy person and you've left a marriage, healthy marriage, unhealthy marriage, you're going to be in therapy for a long time.
They both require work. They require you refining yourself. They require you to act. Let's put it this way. At the end of your days, you want to know, exactly like you said earlier, that you did everything that you could to make it work, and then you made the call. And beyond the phone call, that you did everything that you could to still try and raise emotionally healthy, stable human beings throughout the process.
But then you know what? You have to love your kids more than you hate the other person.
Also having the emotional ability and the emotional intelligence to navigate those conversations to their level of understanding. It's like the same way that we say when you're trying to teach your kids about sex, you have to teach them to their level, right? So you don't just go and blurt out everything to a 5-year-old about the birds and bees when they ask you, where do babies come from? You give them a simple answer. And if that satisfies them, then great. In that same way, you have to explain what's going on to your kids and allow them to have those questions. And in my experience, somebody who's emotionally healthy and stable is not afraid of those questions that their kids are going to ask, because they know they did everything that they could. And it's not a reality check, because those questions of why didn't you, and it's an explanation of like, we tried, it's not working anymore. This is the best thing for you guys now. This is the best choice for our family. And it could just be as simple as that. But allowing the child to reflect and to ask those questions is uncomfortable for the parent, but it's needed for them. And I think that that's important.
This is where, the right therapist for your kid is essential, and you don't have to put your kid in therapy the minute you get divorced. That's not what it is. But as a parent, you have to be responsible and pay attention and be attuned to them. And as you see certain changes or certain questions, it might be time to talk to a mental health professional. And, there's no shame in calling a professional and saying, I need your guidance on how to talk to my child about these questions.
Yeah.
And I think that's adulting, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then reaching out to someone who does.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who to ask,
I think it's a huge strength, and it shows an amazing quality in an individual to be able to say, I don't know, and reach out to a resource that does know.
Yeah. And if you don't have a resource, then just call a friend.
This conversation is important. It allows people to really understand the nuance of what really happens, and to hopefully help them understand that the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just
green where you water it. I mean, look,
green where you water it, which goes
cliche,
back to doing the work.
works.
Whether it's on this side or on that side, it doesn't matter. It's the accountability. It's the looking yourself in the mirror. It's understanding what I contribute to that's good, what I contribute that's not good, and understanding where I, as an individual, need to change. Because whatever happens here, I still need to live with me. I still need to be okay with me. And we're all flawed human beings. And it's understanding that. That's really the importance that I would like for the listeners to take from this, is that it's not about better or worse, or this is good. It's really nuanced, and it really depends on your life and what can you live with and what's your red line. So thank you, Gity.
Thank you for
coming.
Me.
Thank you so much.
This really was great. And I really just hope that at least something I said could resonate with somebody to just keep them out of really acrimonious and hostile litigation.